How do you lead with your DISC profile? How do you become the best S leader that you could possibly be? What is it about your D-ness that needs to shift so that you can adapt yourself to other people? So that's what I want to cover in the next few minutes. Let's start with the C's. They're the top 3 leadership tips I want to give to a C. Number 1 is realize that perfectionism doesn't exist. Lower the frequency of your criticism. And the C's tend to be so perfectionist and so high standard and so detailed that if, let's say, there's a project and maybe there's 100 things wrong with it, you would point out, all 100 of it. And by pointing out all 100 of it, you have basically demotivated and may have demoralized the team. Unknowingly, I know you mean well. So my proposal is focus on the top 3. Focus on the top 3 that makes the most impact and discuss that with constructive feedback mechanism. So that's the first tip. The second tip with a C is check less often. Sometimes we tend to be micromanaging our team if we're Cs. You're checking a lot of things, having a lot of systems, and it bogs people down. So again, determine the top 3, the top 5, whatever it is, the top things that you need to check, and maybe the rest will just fall in place by itself, okay? But don't micromanage people. Leave them to do their stuff and be more result-oriented instead of overly procedure and protocol-oriented. The third thing is tone down on your over-preparation. There's no need to spend too much time over-preparing for stuff. And as a result, sometimes you may be late in your decision-making and you may impact the rest of the organization because your decision is not out yet because you're overly analyzing your data. So that's for the C's. Let's go on to the D's. Now, the top 3 tips I want to give to D leaders is, number 1, you have a great presence. You have the natural ability to expose yourself in the front of your group. You lead the group. However, it works only to a certain point. There may be times in your leadership journey that you want other people to expose themselves, you want other people to shine, you want to have other people make decisions. Now, you need to back off. You need to know when to kind of tone down your dominance. Because naturally, people are hesitant to take over you because you're so good at what you do. So unless you naturally tone yourself down and you naturally, consciously back off and allow other people to step forward, there will probably be a time where you realize that you're always leading the same group and you're not going anywhere in your career either because you're always needed in your group. So if you want career advancement, if you want your people to grow, back off and let them lead. The second thing is watch it when you give orders, because sometimes the D's can get a little bit too direct, using too direct of words, very high or very aggressive tonality with body language, and people get offended when you give them orders. Make sure you actually watch yourselves and make sure that your style is being adapted to whoever you're talking to. And the third thing is, make sure that when you are setting a goal, there is action steps and a plan on how to achieve it. Because sometimes the problem with D's is that you have really high expectations, you have high goals, and unless you chunk them down into what are actually the steps I need to put in place to achieve them, it overwhelms the entire organization. It makes your goals seem unreachable. And you don't want that, because you want people to be rallied up behind your goal. So with those 3 tips, you will become a much better leader as a D because you naturally are already a great leader. Okay, so I don't need to teach you a lot of things. You have the natural talent. It's just how do you polish yourself and to become even better. So let's move on to the S's. The S's, they need to understand that, being an S, you're naturally very sensitive to things. You need to desensitize yourself. Don't get too bogged down with your feelings and getting hurt when people do stuff to you, because it's probably just business. Especially if you're dealing with a high D, they will offend you pretty much all the time, okay? So learn to deal with it and desensitize yourself. Learn to be more objective. Secondly is stretch yourself out of your comfort zone, because the S natural style is to stick with something you know. Okay, so I challenge the S's to kind of try something different. Maybe try something different every week, and in terms of, just to practice yourself to change, try a new menu at the lunch every week. Take your spouse to a different place every week, and just try out change. Maybe you'll even like it. And do the same with your business as well. The third thing I would like to emphasize for the S's is learn to express your feelings. The S has a tendency, when you are confronted with something or when you're uncomfortable with something, you will acquiesce. You will give in, even if you don't agree. And people will think you agree, but you actually know you don't. So the idea is start expressing yourself more openly so that other people can understand you better, and you'll be surprised. They're actually pretty much like you enough to be able to give in to you at one time or another, okay? So express yourself. You've been a very supportive team player. It's time for other people to know how you really feel. So let's move on to the I's. The I's, you need to be more attentive to details, especially if you're leading a team or a project, or you have people under you who have their own tasks. How do you create a fun and a simple system to keep them accountable? How do you get your priorities straight and your organization of the tasks straight? Okay, so attend to more of the details. Number 2 is base your decisions more on facts rather than emotions, because the natural tendency of the I is actually to go with your emotion, go with the flow, go with your intuition. And you may be lucky sometimes, but it also helps to also base your decisions based on facts. The third is actually just to write things down. Don't rely on your memory, because especially if you're leading an organization, you have a lot of projects, you have a lot of people under you, have a written system. Your mind tends to be distracted very easily. You have a tendency to be more active than the other personality profiles. So it's easier for you to keep track of things if they're actually written down. So those are the top 3 things for the I.